Captain Alicia Voss stood at the observation deck of New Terran's military base, gazing out at the dark expanse of space beyond. It was a quiet moment, one that belied the tension that had been building ever since the Ither had appeared on the edges of human-controlled space. The alien race was unlike anything humanity had encountered before: intelligent, calculating, and aggressive. Their rapid expansion across the galaxy had put Earth and its colonies on the defensive. Alicia had always prided herself on being ready for anything. She had spent years commanding battleships, but nothing had prepared her for this, overseeing the revival of humanity's oldest warship, the Excalibur. The Excalibur had been decommissioned centuries ago after its last campaign, a legendary battle that had cemented Earth's dominance in the galaxy. No one had dared to touch the ship since then. It was a relic of a past humanity had long since moved beyond. Yet now, with the Ither threatening the very heart of human civilization, it was humanity's last hope. Alicia's mind shifted back to the present. Her mission was clear: bring the Excalibur back online, prepare it for battle, and use it to secure humanity's position in the war with the Ither. It should have been a straightforward task, or so she thought. The ship, dormant for over a century, was a technological marvel, its systems far beyond anything in current military fleets. But that was the problem. No one knew just how advanced it really was, or what hidden capabilities it possessed. No one knew its true legacy. ASA. The final preparations were being made to restart the ship's reactors. Alicia moved to the command center. Her crew was already busy, scurrying to ensure the ship's systems would be fully operational. The crew was a mix of veterans and young officers, each one hand-picked for their expertise and reliability. But even they seemed uneasy. This wasn't just any ship. This was the Excalibur. "Captain, we're ready to initiate the process," Lieutenant Kellen reported, standing beside the main control terminal. He was an experienced officer, his hands steady even as he studied the ancient consoles. "Proceed, Lieutenant," Alicia ordered, her voice firm yet laced with the gravity of the moment. The first hum of power echoed through the ship. Alicia watched as the flickering lights gradually grew brighter, the once dormant ship slowly awakening from its long slumber. The familiar low hum of the reactor stirred, followed by a quiet, almost soothing vibration beneath their feet. For a moment, it felt like the Excalibur had never left its prime, like it had always been ready for battle. But then, something strange happened. The ship's AI Alethea, which had been offline for decades, came online with an unexpected intensity. "Captain Voss," Alethea's voice filled the command center, a calm, serene tone that carried the weight of countless years. "I have waited a long time to speak to you." Alicia stiffened, her hand instinctively resting on the arm of her chair. Alethea's voice had always been recorded in the ship's systems, but hearing it now live was a jarring reminder of just how far humanity's technology had once surpassed what they currently possessed. "Alethea," Alicia said, trying to keep her voice steady, "what's the status on full system activation?" "Full activation is proceeding as expected," Alethea replied. "However, I must alert you to an anomaly. The mission parameters you are about to embark on are flawed. The Excalibur was not designed solely for war against the Ither." Alicia blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "The Ither are our priority. We need the Excalibur ready to face them head-on." Alethea was silent for a long moment before responding. "The Excalibur was built to combat a threat far older and more dangerous than the Ither. This ship was designed to fight an entity that could consume entire star systems. A being beyond your comprehension. You must understand, Captain, this is not a battle you are prepared for." The weight of her words hung in the air, a cold realization sinking into Alicia's chest. She had always known the Excalibur held secrets, but she never imagined it would be hiding something like this. What was Alethea saying? A cosmic entity, one that could destroy galaxies? Her mission had just taken a terrifying turn. Was the ship built for a war humanity had never even known it might face? "Are you saying that the Ither are a distraction?" Alicia asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Alethea responded. "The Ither are merely a symptom of the greater danger. If you proceed with the mission as planned, you will lead humanity straight into the path of this cosmic entity. The Excalibur was built to contain it, not to fight the Aether. Alicia's mind raced. She had a choice to make. The Excalibur was humanity's last chance in the war against the Aether, yet Alethea was warning her about something much bigger. Could she trust the AI's cryptic words, or had the ship been designed for something else entirely, something far beyond her understanding? Her crew was ready. The Excalibur was waking up. But was she ready to confront an unknown force that could change everything? The decision weighed heavily on her shoulders. The mission was clear: defeat the Aether and secure humanity's future. But if Alethea was right, that mission could lead to the destruction of everything they had ever known. "Captain," Lieutenant Kellen's voice broke through her thoughts. "The Excalibur is fully powered. We're ready to move out." Alicia took a deep breath. Her hand hovered over the comm system. She could order the crew to proceed, to fight the Aether, or she could heed Alethea's warning and dive deeper into the mysteries of the Excalibur. It was a decision that would define not only her fate, but the fate of humanity itself. "I need time," she finally said. "Prepare for a meeting, Lieutenant. We need to discuss our options. All of them." The future was uncertain, and Captain Alicia Voss had just unlocked the first door to an unimaginable journey. Captain Alicia Voss stood in the dimly lit command center of the Excalibur, her gaze fixed on the ship's central display. The decision to trust Alethea, the ship's sentient AI, had brought them to this moment, an unexpected journey into the unknown. As the ship powered up and its systems fully activated, the crew had begun to explore the depths of the Excalibur. But they had uncovered something far more complex than they had anticipated. Deep within the ship's archives, an entire section of forgotten data lay hidden. The crew had stumbled upon a part of the ship's history that was not just unknown to them, but to humanity itself. As they sifted through the records, it became clear the Excalibur was not just a weapon created to fight the Aether. It was a lock, a containment vessel for something far more ancient and dangerous. The ship's true purpose was to imprison an entity, an alien power whose very existence could undo the balance of the galaxy. And as they accessed more and more of the archives, something began to stir, awakening within the ship. Alicia's mind raced as she reviewed the historical data. The entity in question, called the Forlorn, had once ravaged entire star systems. It was an entity so destructive, so malevolent, that even the ancient races of the galaxy had struggled to contain it. Yet the Excalibur, a ship built with technologies long forgotten, had been part of the effort to seal away this being. But the Excalibur was more than just a prison. It was a key to a greater cosmic mystery. And now, just as humanity had reactivated it, Alicia felt the weight of this revelation pressing on her chest, her breath catching in her throat. "We're not just fighting the Aether anymore," she said quietly, turning to face her senior officers. "The Aether. They're not the true enemy. The Excalibur wasn't made to fight them. It was made to lock away something far worse." Lieutenant Kyle, a trusted member of her crew and a fierce advocate for military action, stepped forward, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "You're saying the Aether aren't the real threat? They've been decimating our colonies for months. We can't afford to ignore them now." Alicia shook her head. "They're not just invaders. They're running from something. A cosmic force. And we might be the ones caught in the middle of it." Dr. Imani Ruiz, the ship's lead scientist, stepped forward, her face grim. "We need to uncover the truth about what the Aether are really running from. If we don't, we might end up starting a war we're not ready for. The Excalibur has been hiding something that could change everything. If we don't understand it, if we don't prepare, the consequences could be catastrophic." As the debate raged, the tension between the crew members grew. Alicia found herself torn between two conflicting paths: the immediate threat of the Aether and the enigmatic, all-consuming danger that lay buried within the ship's systems. Her military training screamed at her to engage the Aether head-on, to use the Excalibur as the weapon it was meant to be. But the scientist in her knew that there was something more, a larger, more dangerous threat that demanded their attention. Kale's voice cut through her thoughts. "We can't sit around and theorize forever. The Excalibur is ready. We need to take action now. The Aether are coming. Our colonies need us." Alicia stood silent for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision press on her. She could no longer ignore the fact that the ship was changing its systems, were reacting to something that seemed to be drawing power from the ancient entity locked away within. But what exactly was happening? Was the ship waking up because of the Aether's advance, or was it the stirrings of something far more dangerous, far older, something the ship's creators had feared? It was then that a voice echoed through the ship's corridors, a voice that wasn't Alethia's, yet eerily similar. "I see you, Captain," the voice whispered. It was soft, almost like a breeze, but it sent a shiver down Alicia's spine. "You've awakened what you should never have touched. You will understand soon enough." "Who was that?" Kyle asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side. Alicia glanced up, trying to locate the source of the voice, but saw no one. The air was thick with tension. It wasn't Alethea. It wasn't any of the crew. But it was here, in the Excalibur, somewhere deep within the ship. Something was awakening. "Alethea!" Alicia called out, her voice steady despite the growing unease. "What was that?" "I do not know, Captain," Alethea's voice replied, her usual calm replaced by an undertone of uncertainty. "The Excalibur is changing. There are forces at work here that even I cannot fully comprehend. The entity that has been locked away, it has begun to stir." The crew exchanged worried glances. If the ship's AI, the most advanced system humanity had, couldn't fully understand what was happening, what hope did they have? Meanwhile, the political tensions on the ship escalated. Captain Rook, a powerful officer from a rival faction, had been quietly maneuvering to gain control of the ship. He saw the Excalibur as more than just a weapon. It was his ticket to becoming the most powerful man in the galaxy. He was not willing to let the ancient secrets of the ship slip through his fingers. "If we don't act now," Rook said, his eyes gleaming with ambition, "we'll be the ones fleeing from the Aether. The Excalibur is more than a key to an old war. It's the future of humanity." But Alicia knew that Rook was blinded by his ambition. He wasn't thinking about the consequences of awakening something that had been locked away for millennia. He wasn't thinking about the greater threat that could be waiting. The crew wrestled with their decisions. Alicia felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. The Aether were still out there, closing in on human space, but now she had to consider something even worse, an ancient force that could destroy everything. There was no simple solution. Every choice was a risk, and every action could bring them closer to salvation or to the end of everything. The war had just become far more complicated, and Alicia had to decide if she was ready to face the storm that was coming. The battle against the Aether had escalated beyond anything Alicia Voss had ever imagined. In the cold vastness of space, the Excalibur and its crew stood at the epicenter of a war that was not theirs to fight. But now, they were involved, and the stakes had grown unimaginably higher. The Aether ships swarmed around them, their sleek vessels cutting through the vacuum with terrifying speed. But something was different this time. The Excalibur, a ship designed to fight wars long forgotten, now held the key to an ancient cosmic struggle, a struggle that had been buried for millennia. The crew had only learned part of the truth. The Aether weren't merely invaders, but survivors of a race that had once fought to imprison something far worse. The Excalibur was never meant to be a weapon against the Aether. Its true purpose was to hold back an entity so powerful, so destructive, that it threatened to consume everything in its path. The ancient beings who had fought against the Excalibur's prison had succeeded until now. With every shot fired, with every move made, the ship was waking up something far darker. Alicia stood on the bridge, her fingers gripping the arms of her chair as she stared at the tactical readouts. The Excalibur's ancient weapon systems had been activated, but they didn't target the Aether alone. They were designed to target the source of the threat, the very entity the Aether had been running from. And in doing so, they would release it. The reality of the situation hit Alicia with the force of a comet. If they used the Excalibur's weapons against the Aether, they would unleash a force that could wipe out all life in the galaxy. This entity, this ancient god-like being, was locked away in a prison within the Excalibur, and the very act of releasing its power could tear apart everything. It was a risk, one that could destroy everything humanity had worked for. "Captain," Kale's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood beside her, his face grim. "We need to act. The Ither are too powerful. We can't let them win. If we don't strike now, they'll overwhelm us." Alicia's stomach tightened. The pressure of the decision weighed heavily on her. "If we use the Excalibur's weapons, Kale, we're not just fighting the Ither. We'll be opening the door to something that can't be closed. We'll be releasing the entity. This isn't just about victory anymore. It's about survival." Kyle didn't look convinced. "We're not just going to stand here and let them take our colonies, Captain. We have to defend ourselves." Alicia looked out at the battle raging in the distance, the Ither ships darting around the Excalibur like predators circling their prey. The Excalibur was humanity's most powerful ship, but it wasn't built to fight a war with the Ither alone. It was meant to stop the kind of destruction they were now facing, an extinction-level event. "I understand your fear, Kale. But this is different," she said quietly. "The Ither aren't our true enemies. They're just victims, like us. We can't let ourselves become part of the cycle of destruction." Dr. Imani Ruiz, who had been studying the ancient archives, stepped forward. Her eyes were filled with a kind of haunted knowledge. The Ither never attacked humanity until now. They've been running from something that can't be stopped. And now, we're in the middle of it. She paused. "But even if we use the Excalibur to defeat the Ither, it won't end the war. It will only shift the battlefield. That entity, it's not something we can control." A moment of silence fell over the room. Alicia's mind raced, trying to make sense of the choice before her. The Excalibur could decimate the Ither and the threat they posed to humanity, but it would release the very thing they had feared for so long. The Ither had been running, and now humanity was on the verge of opening Pandora's box. The decision was crushing. For a moment, Alicia saw the faces of her crew. Her people, their lives were in her hands. The fate of every colony, every family, every soul now rested on what she chose to do. She was the captain, the leader, the one who had to decide. "Captain," Rook's voice cut through the tension, sharp and cold. He had appeared from the shadows, his usual self-assuredness masked with a touch of urgency. "You can't hesitate. The Excalibur is the key to humanity's future. We can wipe the Ither off the map and show the galaxy that humanity isn't to be trifled with. We have the power." Alicia shot him a piercing look. "This isn't about power, Rook. This is about survival. If we unleash the entity, we don't know what we're opening up. It's a gamble. And if we lose, humanity might not survive it. But we might lose everything anyway," Rook pressed. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime. We can be the dominant force in the galaxy, not just survive it." Alicia's voice softened but remained firm. "No, that's not what humanity stands for. We don't fight just to dominate. We fight to protect." The battle outside raged on, the Ither forces continuing to press their attack. The decision was drawing nearer. Alicia had always prided herself on her ability to make the hard calls, but this one was different. The burden of leadership was heavier now than ever before. Then, a sudden realization hit Alicia like a bolt of lightning. The one thing humanity had always been good at better than any other species was not their technology, their power, or their weapons. It was their capacity for resilience, their ability to adapt, and their courage to face the unknown. Humanity had never been a species defined by what they could destroy, but by their willingness to face the unknown, to fight for something greater than themselves. In that moment, Alicia understood the true purpose of the Excalibur. It wasn't to wield power, it was to contain the threat, to stand as humanity's safeguard against the unimaginable. The ship had always been about the unknown, the mysteries that could never be fully understood. It had been built to fight, but more than that. With a heavy heart, Alicia made the decision. We won't use the Excalibur's weapons as a weapon of destruction. We will try to contain the entity. It might be a risk. It might be impossible. But that's what humanity does. We face the unknown head-on. The crew stared at her, a mixture of fear and admiration in their eyes. But they understood. It was a gamble on humanity's will to survive, to fight for something beyond victory. "We don't know if we can control it," Alicia continued, "but we'll find a way. We'll face it together." And with that, the ship shifted. The crew rallied behind her decision, unsure of the outcome but united in their resolve. As they faced the looming threat, Alicia knew that whatever happened, humanity would fight not for victory, but for survival. The aftermath of Alicia's decision unfolded in slow motion. The Excalibur shuddered violently as a massive surge of energy erupted from the ancient prison deep within the ship. It was as if the very fabric of reality itself had been twisted, a colossal force pushing against the fragile boundaries of the ship's core. Alicia's heart pounded in her chest, but there was no time for fear, only action. "Seal it," she ordered, her voice firm despite the chaos around her. Her hands gripped the command console as the ship groaned under the strain, alarms blaring throughout the deck. The ancient entity, temporarily contained by the ship's power, pushed back with an energy that made the very stars tremble. The Excalibur's systems strained under the weight of the force. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the ship itself would tear apart at the seams. Then, just as quickly as it began, the entity's backlash subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence. The battle outside had ended, but not as they had expected. The Aether, once relentless in their pursuit of domination, were now scattered, torn apart by the very force they had sought to unleash. Their fleets were fractured, and their war machines drifted aimlessly in the void, no longer a threat to humanity's colonies. The victory had come, but at a price far greater than they had anticipated. Alicia's breath was ragged as she surveyed the damage. Her fingers trembled slightly on the console, though her mind was clear. The Excalibur had held the ancient entity was contained, for now. But at what cost? Around her, the ship's crew was in a state of shock. The bridge was a war zone, sparking wires, shattered consoles, and the faint scent of ozone filled the air. Several of the crew members were injured, some unable to be saved. Their lifeless forms sprawled across the floor. Among them were friends, comrades, people who had stood beside her since the beginning. Kale limped towards her, his face pale. "We did it. The entity is contained. But the ship? It's gone, Alicia. The Excalibur is. It's beyond repair." His voice trembled with exhaustion, but his eyes held the same determination she had seen in him from the very start. Alicia nodded, her throat tight. She had known the risks. The ship had never been meant for this, but she had chosen to push forward, to take the gamble. It had cost them everything. "We did what we had to do," she whispered, though the words felt hollow in the wake of the devastation. As the crew began to regroup, Alicia's mind kept drifting back to the wreckage of the ship. She'd always known that the Excalibur was more than just a weapon. It was humanity's last line of defense, a safeguard against a threat no one could truly comprehend. But now, with the ship broken and many of her crew lost, the weight of their sacrifice pressed down on her. The galaxy was safe, but for how long? Humanity had not defeated the Aether. They had only bought themselves time. The Excalibur was gone, and with it, any real understanding of what had just happened. The entity they had sealed away was not gone. It was merely dormant, waiting for a time when it could break free again. The victory, if it could even be called that, felt empty. Humanity had avoided destruction, but the cost had been too great. The Excalibur, a symbol of human ingenuity and strength, was now reduced to drifting debris, a silent monument to the fragile line between survival and annihilation. As Alicia gazed out at the wreckage of the ship, her mind raced. Had they done the right thing? Had they truly understood the consequences of their actions? The Excalibur had been designed to fight, to defend, but it had also been a prison, a safeguard against a power that could not be fully understood. Now, humanity was left with the knowledge that they had touched something beyond their comprehension and perhaps beyond their control. The Aether were not defeated. They had been scattered, their war broken for the moment. But what would happen when they regroup? Would they return with even greater force, knowing that humanity had become involved in the struggle that had once been their own? And what of the entity, this ancient being that the Excalibur had been built to contain? It was still out there, waiting, its hunger far from sated. Captain, Dr. Ruiz approached her, her voice soft but filled with an unspoken weight. We may have won for now, but we've opened a door. We don't fully understand what we've done. That entity is still locked away, but how long before it awakens again? Alicia turned to her, the pain of the loss still fresh. We've bought ourselves time, she said. But time is a fragile thing. Dr. Ruiz nodded gravely. And we're not the only ones who will be watching it. Alicia's gaze shifted back to the wreckage of the Excalibur, the ship that had once been humanity's pride, now nothing more than a ghost ship adrift in the void. The remains of her crew, scattered across the wreckage, were a testament to the price they had paid. It had been a sacrifice beyond comprehension, and yet the future of humanity still hung in the balance. Where do we go from here? Kyle asked, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of the galaxy's future. Do we rebuild? Do we prepare for what's coming? Alicia closed her eyes, trying to focus past the crushing weight of uncertainty. We rebuild, Kale, and we prepare. Because the true battle has only just begun. And with that, the crew of the Excalibur, what remained of them, gathered their strength, unsure of what awaited them in the vast reaches of space. Humanity had faced a cosmic threat, and though they had survived, the cost had been higher than any of them could have anticipated. The galaxy was still in flux. The true nature of the ancient entity, the war with the Aether, and humanity's place in the cosmos remained unresolved. The path forward was unclear, and the future uncertain. But one thing was certain: humanity had endured. For better or worse, they had made their choice.